Welcome to Voices of Supported Employment, the podcast by Durham Enable. Each episode highlights the stories of individuals with disabilities, job coaches, and employers all working together to build a more inclusive workforce. We explore the impact of supported employment, showcasing how job coaches empower individuals and how employers can create disability-confident organisations. Join us as we break down barriers, inspire change, and work towards a future where everyone can thrive in the world of work. We have made it to launch week of the podcast. My name is Bambi French. I am one of the team leaders here at Durham Enable, and I will be your host, at least for this, the first series of the Voices of Supported Employment podcast. First, I want to make sure that you are under no illusion that the creation of this podcast has been a complete team effort, and there is no way that this very small seed of an idea could have resulted in what you will hear over the next few weeks without the support and hard work of so many. Mine may be the consistent voice you hear each week, but there are others who you may or may not get to see or hear, members of the Durham Enable team who have supported the overall vision and mission of the podcast, have provided encouragement and support, and have used their expertise in whatever way has been needed to make sure we got the job done. I am personally extending my thanks to the whole of Durham Enable, an excellent supported employment service made up of an equally exceptional group of people, constantly working towards achieving the best employment outcomes for those accessing the service. I consider it an absolute privilege that I get to work with you all. So, as I said, this is launch week, and you'll be getting 3 episodes of the podcast today, Wednesday, and Friday, and then 1 each week on a Tuesday. The theme for each of the episodes this week is what has supported employment meant for me. I'm not going to give any more than that away. You'll have to make sure that you have downloaded and subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're doing that, please leave a review. The more reviews we get, the more people will come across the podcast, and the more we'll be able to spread the word about the transformational change that supported employment brings to the lives of those with disabilities, businesses, and organisations of all shapes and sizes. As a team, we've had lots of conversations about the direction that this first series should go in and the themes that should be covered. One of the decisions was that I should allow you all to get to know me a bit more, share some of my story, my experiences of living with a disability, and what supported employment has meant for me. So I met with disability in the form of visual impairment in my early teens. I am categorized as being severely sight impaired because of where I fall on the scale, but I never use that term. I just say visual impairment, and then if anyone needs to know or wants to know more about how this impacts me, I tell them. I was always really independent as a child, and I could see and do everything I needed and wanted to do. And as I got older, my sense of independence grew stronger. It was when I started secondary school that things started to change. I noticed that I was finding it more and more difficult to read the text in books and newspapers. As a child, I was a bookworm, and I could get through 1 or 2 novels a week. The text became less clear, and my reading speed started to slow right down. I stopped reading out loud in class because I kept stumbling over words, misreading, or even missing out whole words. The whole thing became such an exhausting process that I decided to stop volunteering to read in front of class. I couldn't see what the teacher was writing on the board either. In the early 90s, smartboards and all the related tech hadn't yet arrived in schools. So depending on which class and lesson I had, I was met with a combination of chalkboards and overhead projectors with the teacher's handwritten scrawl on acetate sheets. Does anyone remember the smell of those sheets? Apples are coming to mind for me, but you can let me know if you remember differently. I said nothing about the challenges that I was experiencing for quite a while. I think I just thought that it was me, that maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. So I developed ways to make things look as though I was doing just fine. Masking. It's what so many of us with disabilities or similar challenges do all the time, trying to convince ourselves and everyone else that there is no problem here. As a young teenage girl, I became a professional at this. So GCSEs were on the way, subject options had been chosen, and I knew that the curriculum demands would be increasing. I was getting worried about not being able to keep up with all the work, with all the reading that I had to do. So I made the decision to tell my parents about what I'd been experiencing. Lots of things happened after that point, and you can read about all of that detail if I ever write a book. But to cut a long story short, after lots of tests, I was eventually diagnosed with Stargardt's disease, also known as juvenile macular degeneration, which had set me on a path to progressive sight loss. Being 15 years old and hearing that complete blindness would likely come when I was about 30 years old was, as you can imagine, not the most welcome news. How was I going to finish my education? How was I going to get a job? I was upset about the fact that I wouldn't be able to learn to drive like all my friends would be doing over the next few years. But I'm okay with that now, as I have realized that by not driving, I'm actually doing a service to humanity. I have driven a car once. I took part in a blind drive event to help raise money for the training of guide dogs. That, I think, is a whole episode in itself. So if enough of you subscribe and download and share this podcast, maybe I'll tell you all about it. I started to get the help and support I needed to get me through school and university, and I went on to train as a teacher and spend almost 20 years working primarily with children and young people with additional needs of almost every type and complexity. I did this work for long enough to notice common themes and questions across the very unique difficulties that each person I came into contact with was facing. Some of those questions sounded like this. What's going to happen next? When my daughter finishes their education, what will happen to them? They have these needs. Will they be able to get a job and earn their own money? Who will hire them? And if they do get a job, will they be safe in the workplace and get the support that they need? The only way that I knew to respond to these questions was to try and encourage and reassure that future success was possible, and where needed, I would use my own experience as evidence that this was true. What I didn't voice at the time was that I wasn't totally sure. I had received a lot of help and support to get to where I was at that point, but I'd had a lot of setbacks too. And I know that setbacks affect everyone at some point in life. But when you have a disability, even a small bump on the road can be the only thing that's needed to make you want to give up and stop trying altogether. I've faced the misconceptions and misunderstandings in relation to my needs that have, on quite a few occasions, made me want to give up work altogether. And I continue to hear about others going through the same thing. If I'm honest, the what's next question was something that I thought about a lot too. I spent a lot of time thinking about how the young people I was working with would live out the next potentially 70 years of their lives and do it as well as they could with the challenges they were facing. I remember being told that that was something that I shouldn't be too concerned about, and that it was all about what we were doing in the school at that moment. You might be thinking that my thought process is a bit extreme, and you might be right, but it's the way I'm wired. Maybe the person who said that it was all about what was being done in school at the time had a point. But because I had lived what these young people were getting ready to face, I think I had a point too. I began to get an answer to my questions in June 2024 when I joined Durham Enable as a job coach. By this point, I'd heard something about what the service was doing, but still didn't have a firm understanding about what supported employment meant. On my very first day, I started a course called Training in Systematic Instruction, TSI for short. You'll have heard the phrase, when you know, you know. And within the first couple of hours of the training that lasted a whole week, I knew I was in the right place. Everything I was learning kept making me think back to my experiences in education and work. If I'd had this, things might have been different. But in the same way that I was reflecting on my journey, I was also thinking about the many lives in the future that could be changed with more of us being trained in TSI and having a better understanding of the role that supported employment plays in moving us closer to true inclusion in the workplace. I was able to transfer a lot of my skills from special education to working as a job coach. I was given a caseload of job seekers with different needs, much like my special needs register at school, but with a lot fewer names on it. I began working within the team and soaking up all of the inspiring stories of change and overcoming challenge that the coaches and clients were experiencing. I learned about the 5-stage model of supported employment, the 12 core values of supported employment, and then watched how all of the theory played out in practice in the day-to-day of this team. Point of this recording, I haven't yet reached a year with Durham Enable. I have transitioned from job coach to team leader and been able to support the team to continue developing the skills that are helping us to keep improving our practice. To directly answer the question about what supported employment has meant for me, my answer is twofold. First, on a personal level, I now understand what it means to work in a place where everyone understands that the fact that I have a disability, it doesn't mean that I have to be concerned about being held back from making progress in my career. If there's a problem, I feel safe enough to voice it without judgment, and I know that a solution will be found. Some of you will understand what I mean when I say that it's usually easier to advocate for the needs of others, but when it comes to getting the support that you need for yourself, it can be a lot more challenging to speak up. I'm getting better at this, but it's a process. On a professional level, I know that I have found the sector that I want to be part of in whatever way that looks like for many years to come. I know I've said it, but I'll say it again. The transformational change that the supported employment model and values brings to the lives of people with disabilities and entire organizations is nothing short of inspiring. When I think back over my experiences and the fact that it took so long for me to discover the sector, I want to be able to play my part in ensuring that more and more people get to know about it and hopefully don't have to wait as long as I did. This podcast has been born out of a desire to find a way to capture more of the inspiring, empowering, and informative conversations that we have as a team and service as a whole. I think everyone should hear what is happening in the world of supported employment, and the podcast will hopefully prove to be an effective way for us to spread the message. Well, that's a bit about me and my journey. I hope you've been able to take something of value from what you've heard. Remember, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe and download the podcast. Go ahead and do that now so that you don't miss the next episode. If also you'd be so kind as to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that will help us reach more people who need to hear this. Links to the transcript of this episode, the Durham Enable website, and other helpful resources can be found in the show notes below. So until the next episode, let's continue to build workplaces and organizations where everyone feels and knows that they are safe, seen, and supported.